All right. I know, Tim is chomping at the bit, I can tell. All right. I'm going to call to order the Wednesday, January 25th meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee in the high school library at 6 p.m. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. I'm going to read aloud our vision statement. We're a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families in the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners, students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So thank you all for coming tonight. Day 2 of the fiscal year 21 budget proposals. We heard from the 3 elementary schools last night. Tonight we will be hearing from the athletics department, the middle school, and the high school. Tomorrow we will finish up with, help me here, we've got curriculum, IT, special education, and district-wide?
And district-wide. Yeah.
All right, awesome. So we'll finish up tomorrow night. The schedule of following meetings through the rest of the budget season is available on the website. And if you look at the public postings, you can find the PDF versions of all of the documents that we'll be going through tonight in case you're online and following along. I know there were a lot of people online last night because I was getting texts and emails as soon as I got home and a couple of comments today. So.
And so just to clarify too, obviously those posts disappear after a week or two after they've been posted. So the FY21 budget page will be set up as of tomorrow with all of these documents in the first tab. And then again, it will get edited and updated as we go through the process over the coming weeks and months.
Okay.
So that should be up by the end of the day tomorrow. I will have that all set.
Excellent. All right. Reminder on the microphones, we have new mics. They do not need to be swallowed for everyone to hear us, so you can leave them where they were set up on the table. You don't have to pull them towards you when you speak. Also, we do tend to get echoes when there are multiple mics on that are near each other. So if someone if you're speaking and someone next to you is going to speak next, if you could turn off your microphone so that they don't get a lot of echo in what they're saying, that would be terrific. And just a quick comment, on the table is a copy of a letter that Policy and Advocacy has been working on. This was something that they literally finished about 15 minutes ago, the draft of. So they're working on this in conjunction with the, or I guess in relation to the community or the Commission on Low and Declining Enrollment Districts that was established through the Student Opportunity Act to reach out to districts that are in similar positions to us, either through declining enrollment because of simple demographics, or because of declining enrollment for charter schools, because there's a lot of commonality there. So we're hoping to link up with some other communities, be able to give one consistent message to the legislators that are going to be serving on that commission, and then also legislators who will down the road eventually be making some legislation based on the recommendations of that commission. I think that's it. Oral communications from the public. Seeing none, that would put Triton Athletics up, please. Mr. Alberts.
So this is a first. So for 2 of our 3 presenters this evening, this is a first time as they're new this year. So this is both a welcome to Mr. Alberts as well as his first opportunity to present. So over to you, Tim.
Thank you, everyone. Since I started in August, I couldn't be happier here at Triton. Unbelievable coaches, awesome facilities, and just amazing students. So it's been an honor to be here in the short time. And, I've done quite a bit of listening and observing. And, it's a great budget already, but a few recommendations and requests that I have to kind of take it to the next level. So. First and foremost, the main priority of our student athletes is always on academics. The coaches have done a fine job working with the faculty and with the administration and the students to make sure that they're performing in the classroom first and foremost. We've done a great job on emphasis of student leadership. We've reinvented the Leaders Club. Special thanks to Donna Anderson and Macy Morrison. So we opened it up to different student-athlete leaders in the school and have met with them to face challenges that they might be going with, give them the tools they need to be successful leaders, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. Student welfare has been a priority. We've taken groups of students to the MIA Wellness Workshop. The MIA is our governing board in Westboro. We did that in the fall. And also the MIA Sportsmanship. We took a group of students to Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. Giving back to the communities has been a priority as well. Really proud of the teams for organizing sports clinics, youth nights, cancer awareness games, clothing drives, Boys and Girls Club visits, and working with students with disabilities. So what's most exciting is a lot of these initiatives were student-led and student thought of, which is awesome. So moving forward in our budget presentation, you have the packet on page 4 of the athletics section, personnel budget requests. We have the current staffing levels and requested staffing levels for FY21. Doing some restructuring on positions of coaching positions that were vacated. So I'm actually requesting one less staff person with the savings shown. But I am requesting a new position that would be a strength and conditioning coach that would be available to all students, not just athletes. And that strength and conditioning coach would work with both the middle school and the high school, the equivalent of a low-tier varsity coach, but more inclusive to work with a larger population of students. The benefits of a strength and conditioning coach, just the short-term benefits, the students would be much less prevalent to injury. Most common injuries when consulting our trainer has been shin splints. Students are more at risk for ACL knee injuries when they're not in shape. So the strength and conditioning coach would be available to work with the student athletes before the season begins and also while they're in season as well. Another short term, the teams will be in much better shape, so there'll be more coaching involved on tactics, which will yield, make the joke tonight. So, and I did not have a strength and conditioning coach, but just wanted to point that out. So that was my staffing. If we could flip to page 6. Page 5 has all the details, but I'd like to kind of start with page 6. As I mentioned with the coaching, we'd be restructuring the positions, and it would be phasing out a few paid assistant coaches that were grandfathered in over past. The contracted services, yes.
So this is, when it got collapsed in the book, it's shy of 1 page. So I believe you're
Oh, okay.
on
Yes.
page, it's now 5, so it's the detailed line item?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Just make sure everyone's there, not confused. That was
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
That's right.
So yes, the detailed line item requests, if everyone's there. Contracted services, the ice time at the Graf rink is expected to increase for our ice hockey team by $15 an hour. Recurring costs for police details, fire details for football games, video analysis that teams have been using over the years, I put in the budget. And the trainer costs from previous contracted services was taken out. So that created the new line item. Under supplies and materials, one main emphasis from hearing from students, parents, booster groups is, the students haven't had uniforms given to them by the district. I like to think that uniforms are a necessity for the teams, so that would be something. I know historically It's been a little while, but I know it was in the budget before, and that would be something I'd really like to see as far as a uniform rotation cycle. And I put that in for $25,000 per year. And it would be implemented on a needed basis, going back on which teams need it most frequently. Officials, mild increase. Those increases aren't as strong because the Cape Ann League did not offer certain middle schools programs this past fall. So those expenses were taken out. And transportation, put in the leasing of the 2 minivans that the school uses. So I put that in, which was already, we're already using that in there, but I wanted to put it in there for this year too, so. And on page 6, kind of the more detailed line items. So when putting that staffing together, I think restructuring, I think getting that strength and conditioning coach would benefit the whole student population and would just be a tremendous asset for the students. And we could add it under what we'd spent last year. And the uniform rotation, under supplies and materials on page 7. That's the increase I put in there. So overall, it's about a $25,000 increase, which is a moderate increase over last year's budget. But I think would go, would help out all students and all our families in the district, from what I've heard. And no capital improvements requested for this year. Would like to thank Chris Walsh, the facility director, for all the work he's done in our schools. I don't know how he does it. Seems like he's always here when he's managing schools throughout the district, so he's been great. I'm happy to take any questions anyone has.
All right, questions from the committee? Maureen?
Tim, I have a question about the strength and conditioning coach. You said that the coach would work with all students. Do you envision that that would be with like the physical education teachers or after school, before school? What do you sort of see that working?
No, great question. I pictured it being after school, an extracurricular, so it wouldn't be part of the PE class. So, kind of a 2:30 to 4:30 block, Monday through Friday.
Yep.
And can I ask, clarify, so there's a 3, so that's 3 seasons?
Three
So that would be.
seasons. Exactly,
Whether it's
yeah.
the same person or otherwise, it's, the 3 is not 3 separate
Exactly.
people. It's all year long. So that's, coaches are
Right, not
listed as
just-
seasonal.
Not just during sports, not during the season. So it's literally September through,
So it's for every season, so fall, winter, and spring. So the person would be there year-round, whether it's the same
That's-
person or other
that's
people.
what yeah.
But after school for, during athletics. It's part of the athletics program.
Okay.
Exactly.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Dina?
Tim, the ice time at Graff, has there been any consideration, is there anywhere else we can practice or play? I'm thinking, have we contacted governors? Is that a possibility? I know they have their own hockey program there, but, and was it a large increase that you saw or moderate?
Yep. Good question. Ice supply in the state is very high demand. Governors, we have a nice relationship with them. We have one opportunity to host a game there when we're in a bind, but from what I heard, the most part is their ice is either used or spoken for by their school. The Graf rink, in my opinion, is a great location. You know, it's 10 minutes from here and centrally located in the district. They do a great job of managing, you know, they treat us just as well as Newburyport, even though we're technically from the outside. So, you know, in working with them, I think that's a mild increase year over year. Hockey is a very expensive sport. But I think in the best interest of students and families, I think having that 10 minutes from campus is pretty nice.
Can I ask a question, actually? Have you heard anything? So Maple Crossing, I believe is what it's called, in Amesbury, up above Amesbury Sports Park. I think that's 3 or 4. Is there any discussion yet about that being available in the Cal and potentially, or is it still wait and
It's
see?
certainly not open. I'd have to imagine that would be pretty expensive. I think distance-wise, it would be a little further. You know, from my experience, you know, I'm leery because there's nothing worse than having your rink tell you you're not welcome back again.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I've had that situation and, you know, it took a whole community to get it back. So, you know, I am very happy at Graf. I think it's a nice central location for Salisbury, Raleigh, and Newbury students, but that's certainly a attractive
I
option.
just
down
didn't know
the
if they
road,
would maybe offer some to high school to give back to the community.
so. Yep.
Maybe. So sum it up to say, had we all been wise about 30 years ago, we would have opened up ice rinks, and we would all be millionaires.
Exactly.
Okay, good, thank you.
Aaron?
I actually have 2 questions for you. The first one, can you talk a little bit about the uniform program that you plan on putting in place?
Yeah, so, you know, I think over a 5-year term would be how we would be able to, that would give a nice fresh longevity towards the uniforms. You know, some seasons, you know, replacing football uniforms is very expensive. So on a year where football would be replaced, you'd have to also partner with smaller teams that might have less expensive uniforms. So maybe tennis would be that year. But I think just the way it's been now, you know, the students have been fundraising, and 50% has been paid through Prep for Success, which is the athletic program. But, you know, having that opportunity, and unfortunately, some of the teams that don't have the strong booster groups are the ones that might not get uniforms as frequently. So I think having the district support the uniforms is more equitable to all students, not just the teams that have more fans come to their games and stronger booster groups. So, you know, over a 5-year period, I have it all outlined on which teams would go where, based on past practice.
Can you tell us a little bit about the costs for the uniforms and if you intend to have the students still fundraise and contribute into it?
Yeah, so it varies sport to sport. You know, a football set of uniforms might go for, you know, 20 grand, where, you know, more traditional soccer, lacrosse, you might be able to get a full set for 4 grand. So it all depends on the sport. And then fundraising on their own, you know, then the students could kind of, you know, go for items that might benefit them more than just a necessity item.
And then the other thing I would like to hear about is whether or not the Cape Ann is intending to open up those fall programs or the programs that they didn't run this year, if you've heard anything about that, and whether or not that would reintroduce the cost for the teams and the contracts.
No, that's a good question. No one is planning on adding, it was middle school baseball and middle school softball. No Cape Ann Lake teams offered it this past year. There's no plans to have it. Also, the Northeast Conference, which is kind of our neighboring league, same thing. None of their schools, except for the 3 Lynn high schools, offered it this fall. So with travel baseball in the fall, it's just not a kind of a feasible middle school sport offering.
Other question? Paul?
So I don't know if this is a Brian question or a Tim question, but we talk about user fees in here. What about gate receipts? Where, does that play into this budget at all?
I'll turn myself on. Gate receipts pay a chunk of Tim's salary, and that's it.
Okay.
So that was, I mean, there was a time when gate receipts was much larger. I want to say it's 25, 30,000 on the revolving accounts. That's outlined when we get the big budget with all the revolvings and the grants in the back. But that is, I want to say it's about 25,000 per year that comes in, but that offsets the athletic director's salary.
Okay, thank you.
I don't keep all the gate receipts that come in, so. What's that? I don't keep all the gate receipts.
If you'd like to give them to athletics, they would willingly
If you
take them.
see more home games added to the schedule, it's not because of that.
Maureen?
It's not really a question, it's a comment/request. And I don't think this has ever been done in the past, but our schools all put the other funding sources at the back of the budget. And I don't know if it would be possible for athletics to put an other funding sources page as well, to include things that the boosters, all the different booster groups have purchased for the school, the students, not necessarily the gifts that they buy,
Yeah.
but, you know, I know baseball has purchased things for the baseball field. Football certainly purchases a lot of things. It just would be nice for people to see how much Triton Athletics is supported by our boosters.
I agree, and I think that's a new, right, you've been part of the transition from everything being in student activity accounts to a true 501c3 or running through a high school account. So now that it's much more clear, I think you would agree, prior to this, it's been amazing amount of money being funded and things being funded, but no clear accounting of it. So now that we have a more clear accounting, I agree 100%. And I think that balances with what Tim is saying in regards and proposing in regards to uniforms, in that, you know, we provide the basic uniforms. If like this was a discussion we had, if one team wants to fundraise and go from, I'm making this up, from Under Armour to Nike, whatever, then that's fine, but that we would be refreshing our uniforms. And I think along those same lines, in my proposal tomorrow night, talking about phasing in free full-day K and also reducing our user fees. As we talk about more and more being placed on taxpayers, I think the importance of not nickel and diming parents and families when they walk in the door is important as a belief, right? Something we commit to, but I think also in regards to competition, because public school in Massachusetts is competitive, whether through school choice or charter schools or private schools, we have to remain competitive. And as other schools reduce their fees, not only, so it impacts kids accessing, it's late buses, it's kids accessing athletics. If you don't have to pay, like all of us didn't have to pay when we were in school, there'd be more participation. So that kind of goes hand, Tim and I didn't talk about that, but that goes hand in hand. I think it's part of a larger discussion about getting back to, we're never going to get back to a complete free and appropriate public education and FAPE, but getting more towards not nickel and diming for every single thing that we're doing.
Dina?
Two things. Tim, can you address it seems like every year we are asking for waivers from the sports groups for eighth graders to play on high school teams. Can you tell me how many teams that affects and approximately how many students are involved with that?
Sure. Great question. This past fall, we had an eighth grade waiver for the Triton Middle School boys to participate on the JV boys soccer team, and we had half dozen students participate. When we request a waiver, it's because we don't have enough students to field that team. So the year before, it was kind of one jumbo soccer team without the ability to have a full JV schedule and JV practices. So with that waiver, we were able to bring boys up and play a full schedule of JV soccer games and have a JV coach, and it yielded great opportunity to build the pipeline for the future and was fantastic for the younger boys too. That is the only sport we had it for so far. We do co-op with a few other sports. For swimming, we co-op with Pentucket, Georgetown, and Newburyport. And then for skiing, we offer Triton Girls an opportunity to go ski at a cooperative team hosted by Georgetown.
Thank you for that information. The comment that I wanted to make is, and you noted this in your budget request, is that our teams, all except for one team which got the silver academic award, were all gold. And if you can just elaborate on that, because I think it's important that people who are watching this, who aren't aware of what those awards are, what that actually means. Because it kind of lends itself to the importance of the extracurricular activities that we provide for our students here.
Yep. It's statistically proven that if students are involved in extracurricular activities, whether it's sports or performing arts, they're going to do better in the classroom. They're going to be more committed to keep their grades up and be a better teammate. So what our state association, the MIA, does is they recognize teams that have certain GPAs, and they recognize them. So we work with the guidance counselor, give the team roster, and teams that have over a 3.0 GPA get that gold standard award, which means a lot. I think it's something the students really appreciate, and ultimately keeps them on task to perform better in the classroom.
Other comments or questions from the committee? I get to go last, so I want to go back to the uniform rotation cycle, if I could, for a second. So there are 3 members of the committee that sign warrants every week, and I know we see warrants that come in for uniforms. Can you talk about what's done today, kind of your idea for how to get in? Like, I think today we saw boys soccer sweatshirts and something else on the set that just came through. So I'd be interested in what happens now, kind of what's considered an essential versus what's considered an extra. And can you also just quantitatively, number-wise, is this $25,000 in addition to what's being spent today, or is it $25,000 total? And to be fair, I have no idea what that total number is being spent today because we don't see it broken down that way in our reports, so.
Good questions. What I think you might be seeing is a lot of times the students and the teams will purchase items on their own.
That's good. So that's a change. So again, now student activities are all coming through your warrant process,
Right.
as are the athletics gift and the athletics revolving. So you're now signing warrants for money that may have been, or likely was raised by the team.
Okay.
There has also been, we'll call it general fund spending as well, but I would guess, without
Okay.
looking, I would guess the majority, like sweatshirts, is coming through one of the gift accounts, athletic revolving accounts, or the student activity accounts.
I do usually look at the line, and I don't remember that being a student activity line, but I could be wrong. Because there were 2 or 3 at least today.
Interesting. Because we don't supply anything
Okay.
except for the actual uniforms. So
Okay.
I've probably been asked by most teams, hey, can we get warm-ups? Can we get sweatshirts? And I'd love to give it to them, but we can't. So anything extra on top of what they wear when they're on the court or on the playing surface is paid for by themselves. So I'm not exactly sure what that bill was, but
Okay.
I'm happy to follow up with you after. But if I had to guess, maybe it was, a booster group that bought sweatshirts and
Okay.
paid for it out of their
Yeah.
student activity account. So,
Okay. I think one was just a couple of jerseys for an existing team, too, that probably had, I think it was 2 jerseys, so it was.
Yeah, so what's the current rotation now for the uniforms, as far as what we're supplying?
So
Much longer than 5 years.
yeah. No, some of them are very, very old. And I haven't purchased any uniforms since I've been here. Just trying to iron out exactly what the most fair way to do it is, so.
So just to be clear, that 25,000 goes into the budget and stays, and that becomes the rotation. He doesn't come back next year and ask for another 25,000. That money sitting there is a purchase, so then every 5 years is the refresh, just to make sure that people aren't thinking, if you say yes to year 1, it's going to keep increasing for 5 years. That's not the intention.
Okay.
Be clear.
On page 6, there's a note under fall middle school coaches' salaries that there's only offering 2 cross-country teams and 2 field hockey teams, I'm assuming. Is there a reason why? Is there just lack of interest and that's a reduction? Or is there a change in offering for another reason?
No, good question. That was what was mentioned before, the middle school baseball and middle school softball teams that weren't run this year.
Okay,
Sponsored by the league, so.
okay,
So those created those, removed 2 coaches for those 2 sports.
okay, all right.
So just to say, I think we had a discussion very early in the fall, but it was certainly not for lack of trying by Tim. I mean, recruited and tried to get enough students. It's just, there isn't the bolus of students to field the team.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. The co-op sports, I'm assuming we split all those costs, right, with the other schools? Is that why? I mean, I'm assuming that, you know, when I'm looking at a swim team pool rental, that 7,000 is not an entire season for, right, just for the whole co-op team? That's our portion of it, is that correct?
So we actually, we charge the visiting schools a user fee.
Okay.
So they pay the Triton user fee.
Okay.
And then they pay a $50 kind of out-of-district charge
Okay.
on top of the user fee. And then Triton pays for all the
whole-
expenses.
For the
so.
whole amount, okay, so that's included in the student activities numbers that are already in there? Okay. I was just gonna say, that seemed awfully.
No, pool rental is right up there with.
Yeah, I know it
ice rink
is.
rentals,
but
so.
I was gonna say, that seemed low for an entire season, I was actually thinking, so. Okay. And just real quick, on page 7, talking about the football police details. So you both moved it and reduced the amount, but I didn't see a note in there on why the amount was reduced. Is it fewer details that are needed?
That was just based on what I found to be the actual appropriate request for next year.
Okay.
So I just reduced
so
it
it's-
from 10,000 to 6,000.
It's more of a historical use sort of thing? Okay, all right. And in that you have an increase of 25,000 in here roughly, knowing that that's split between the revolving fund with the user fees and the general fund right now, can the revolving fund support that increase? That, their portion, the portion of the increase that would go and be taken out of the revolving fund?
That's a good question.
Let me answer that, Mike. I don't believe, so currently, on the bottom of page 4, it shows the request on the revolving fund down from 240, down to 240 from 252. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I believe Michelle, before she left, was plugging in those numbers, and it was very specifically because the revolving fund isn't supporting athletics, isn't supporting the athletics cost. So that 25,000 is a general fund increase.
So all of that's going to general fund, nothing in revolving?
Correct.
All right, and then this might be a Brian question more than it's a question for you, Tim. But I know we're redoing our transportation contract this year. Oh, sorry. Mike, thank you, Dina.
I can't even hear you.
I know we're redoing the transportation contract this year. So there's a 2.5% increase on the average trip. Is that something that's written into the current contract, or will the new contract affect this line item potentially more than the $788 increase that's already there?
Yes, could very well potentially increase it more. So, all of the discussions to date with Dave Jack, who is the interim, have certainly, I've been in the room with all these owners of transportation companies, and I think we're going to get reasonable rates. Like we've said this before, we don't expect the 30% increase that Burlington just saw. But in the budget, I think it's a 4.5% increase on overall rates is what Dave Jack included for the presentation for tomorrow night. So yes, could that increase? Absolutely.
Okay.
So anything transportation, the only permanent cost or static cost is anything where we're using the 2 vans, so those 2 leased vans.
Right.
So any of the smaller teams certainly use those. Obviously, the football team is not fitting in there. But the smaller teams can use that, and that's then a cost that's already in the contract, or I'm sorry, in the budget.
Okay, so I think we opened bids on the 23rd or something like that,
23rd.
right?
Pre-bid
So-
was last Thursday, the 9th. bids are opening on the 23rd. So 48 hours prior to you going into your workshop on the 25th,
I was just going to ask that. We'll have those numbers for the 25th.
you will absolutely have, so we won't have signed a contract, but we
Right.
will know who the low bid is, and for all intent and purposes, rarely if the low bid, we're not going to be negotiating down much from that, so we'll have a very strong sense of what that is.
Okay. All right. And last question, the lease of the 2 vans, where was that in the budget last year? Because we've had them.
Yes, we have. That's been looking for that. So it's in the general line, we believe. So in the way it was allocated is increase in the athletic, and then we absorbed the increase in what we know will already be an increase in the district line.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that dollar amount include insurance for the driver on the rental?
So for the 2 leases, so because we are not transporting students to and from school, to and from home, we are not providing student transportation according to Mass General Law. So our insurance policies cover all of our employees doing authorized committee business. So we have a process where, whether it's a coach or it's used quite a bit during the day, special education, what do we call these, vocational students, staff are driving these students. So we do an extra driver's check, have a proof of insurance and all of that, go through our own process to screen our own internal people, but then our insurance policies cover those individuals because they're doing district work. As soon as we transport a student from school to home and back, it's then student transportation, and it's under a whole separate regulation. So completely insured, 100% insured, and we have a process to screen the individual driving. They have to be willing to drive. It's voluntary, and they're not paid extra. It's mostly, I mean, we've went through this whole process of how you do this, and most of the districts, not most, but several have done this and just said, you know what, most coaches or otherwise would say, you know what, I'd rather take the van, drive myself. I know I don't get any more money, but I'm not stuck, because we keep talking about bus drivers. There's such a shortage. I'm not going to get stuck at the field in another town waiting 2 hours for the bus to come back because they couldn't get a driver to come get me. So very, very well used. Is that a fair? That was a Michelle thing, and she deserves an incredible amount of credit because that has worked out very, very well.
And last question on that one, we had a conversation when those were put in the budget about them being split between vocational special education during the day and athletics in the post-school day hours. Is that split still happening, or? Well, I guess I'm wondering why it's all charged here, because I would have assumed that when it's, filtered down into the budget, that it would have been a split cost if it was being used by 2 different groups.
I can answer that. So right now, special ed is reimbursing athletics. Michelle, before she left, had established a daily rate. So we're actually funding athletics based on our daily usage. But next year, I think we decided to go more to an even split. So we're trying to figure out. Special ed does use it more, so you'll see in my budget reflected that we're going to be sharing the cost directly. So special ed is going to pay a portion of the lease, and athletics will pay a portion of the lease, rather than billing each other back, because it just creates a lot more work. So yeah, you should see that.
So the 1365 that's listed in this line item, I'm assuming the 27.5 is for both vans, right? I remember it being about $30,000.
Right. So I think
We'll
that.
just see it in athletics, but department-wise, there's some reimbursement going on, sort of.
I mean, I think
behind the
in terms
scenes.
of, I'm trying to remember from my budget, I think we may have to, that may be reduced because we might also be carrying a larger amount.
Okay.
So I think eventually that might be just a clerical error, because it would be a split in terms of the actual cost of the vans, and then special education would pay for its own gas and athletics.
Okay,
So,
So that's actually would be a duplicate request.
yeah, so we have to
then.
make that
So-
adjustment.
Yes.
all right.
So that will actually, that 27.5, basically what it will be is, as Dave said, it will be charged against special ed, so that would decrease this budget
Okay.
by that money, and then it would be the portion used by athletics, so this number goes down significantly.
Congratulations, Tim, your budget just went down.
Tim just got his budget.
All right, and yeah, that was it for me. So any other follow-on questions from the committee? No? Seeing none? All right, thank you for your time, and
Thank you, Tim.
you've passed your first run
you.
through the budget machine.
Thank you for, Brian, for putting me first. Yeah.
That's right. Winning.
All right, and we're moving on to middle school, a seasoned budget presenter, Mr. McCray. I'm not sure if it's worse for Principal Kelly to go after you or after another newbie.
Hi. Thank you for your time, as always. I'd also like to take a second and thank my school council and, of course, the middle school teachers. They're working hard day in and day out. I also would be amiss if I didn't say the two gentlemen that are presenting with me tonight have been a great group of guys to work with since they started in August. We've had a lot of conversations about things, very approachable people, and I want to just thank them too. It's not always easy starting in a new place, and they've done a great job. So, keeping with the theme, I'd just like to kind of touch on a few highlights that are going on in the middle school since the year started. We have a very active student council run by Mr. McAdams. Starting out in October, they ran a Unity Day. All the students in the school signed a anti-bullying pledge on a strip of paper. All those strips of paper were turned into a chain. So if you go into our lobby, you'll see an orange chain that's hanging all around the upper catwalk area when you walk in. It's been there all year and it'll stay there all year. And we remind the students very often about that pledge. And they've done pretty well this year, I have to say. Student Council also sponsored a Spirit Week, kind of aligned with the Homecoming Week in the high school, similar kind of activities and competitions between grades, and that was a lot of fun. And they are presently working on birthday bags, which are bags that basically put together a party for a young person, and they get passed out to families in need so that they can make cakes and have party favors and all that kind of stuff. So kudos to Mr. McAdams for all that work. He does a great job with that group. We've had our first year of project-based learning. It's been fits and starts, but it's kind of getting some momentum now. Seventh grade classes have done a spaghetti dinner as a kind of end of quarter event. And they did fundraising and presented their projects in the cafeteria, and they raised money for the World Wildlife Fund. Next week, the second quarter classes are doing movie night and a fundraiser, and that money will be going to the Australian Wildfire Funds to help animals there. Our students, this is all student-generated, their ideas. Ms. Gulick and Ms. Sheehan just kind of take their ideas and try to figure out what they're going to do with it, and they've done a great job. The eighth grade classes early in the year did an escape room fundraiser. A couple of classrooms made kind of puzzles. Kids could pay money to go in and try to get out. That was a lot of fun. And that class used that money to fund some events to go over to the Salisbury Senior Center, and they spent the day with seniors, and they played bingo and gave them some food and just kind of hung out, did some interviews, did some writing. That was kind of a fun thing, too. At the second half of the year, we have some visits. This is where those vans come in. We're going to go over to some of the elementary schools, that's the plan, and present to some lower grade classes, some science themed public service announcements and stuff that the kids are going to create. So that's on the docket for the second half of the year. We continue to do, every month, we recognize 4 students of the month that are nominated by their teachers. This year, our 8th graders will be going to Washington, D.C. That's a change. We've been going to Canada for the last couple of years since we brought the trip back. So there's a lot of excitement about that. It's also one more day. So I know some nervous parents out there, I'm sure. Now it's 4 days. And this year, we also put together a schedule working group. So I get together with 9 other people, and we talk about the schedule and how we're using it. And we've had some really good conversations and trying to create some changes that are going to be beneficial to the middle school. And then just the last thing, we have 4 7th graders that are taking Algebra 1. I've had some contact from parents about science and advanced science for some of these students next year as well. So that is something that, because of the schedule that's in place, we're able to do. And I anticipate that we'll have more numbers in 7th graders taking 8th grade classes as we move forward. And then obviously those kids will be moving into perhaps high school classes. Hope to work that all out. So that brings me to some of the challenges we're facing. I don't know if you remember, but last year, I had spoken about having an increase in students that are showing anxiety, social emotional difficulties, and we're kind of on a breaking point in our ability to manage that. I have a very seasoned staff of student services. This year, we've seen that we're kind of at a breaking point. We've had a couple of students put out for 45-day placements. Since I've been principal, I think that's happened one other time. We've had one, maybe two, over the 8 years. So that's been something that, to me, is an indicator of the amount of difficulties. The anxiety in general, students coming to student services and not able to access back into classrooms, and they have to stay there. We find them work to do. You get one student, then you get two students, you get 3 or 4 students, that becomes a very busy place, and it's not really an academic environment. We also have to consider the fact that we have an ASD program in the elementary schools that will be sending students up. We're having 2 this year. I believe there's 2 more next year. And so we need to anticipate that and what we're going to do to service those students. And then generally, even though our enrollment tends to be going down a little bit, our special ed numbers, our 504 numbers, remain remarkably constant, and next year they're actually going up quite a bit. I think I'll have 41 IEPs coming into the building, which puts us over 71 IEPs in the building out of 370-odd kids. So, all that being said, I have requested an additional special ed teacher. We went back and forth discussing, do I need more social work help? Do I need more guidance counselor? But I think what it comes down to for me is when students can't be in class, they need an academic environment. Sometimes they can't get back to the whole group, but a smaller group they might be able to work with. I don't have a program that could service that. The programs that I do have pretty good number of kids in them. And, you know, if I have a program now that I have a lot of students that have spectrum disorders, you can't really put students that have some behavioral problems or serious social emotional needs with those kind of students because it just the mix doesn't work right. So I need to kind of expand my ability to have flexibility, if that makes any sense. So I'm asking for a teacher to be in place for that. As far as supplies and services, the only additional need I have is we have a new 8th grade civics curriculum. With that came 2 Chromebook carts. The first year of that was paid for by the implementation of the program. I now have to absorb those lease payments. That in addition to that, my present Chromebook carts that I rent are coming up, that I lease, are coming up for renewal, and the price on those is going up about $900. So all told, I need to move I have to increase that line from $5,384 to $12,996. That's an increase of $7,612. To do this, I tried to look at my budget and move some money around, and in your, the form you have in front of you, it doesn't reflect where I took it from, but I'm going to explain that to you. If you look at line instructional text supplies, which is 2250, it's on page 7. I believe I have the right page numbers. That was, I reduced that by $3,406. That money was allocated for some science materials and some tech education materials. The science materials with the new curriculum we don't really use anymore, those types of materials, and I've been able to move the tech supplies into our regular ed budget. So I can take that money from there, and I also reduced my, which one is it? Sorry, just a minute. I reduced something else by $1,000. I can't remember where it was. The technology equipment line was $2,000, that's line 2,400. I reduced that from 2,000 to 1,000. So I took that, I put it towards the increase, so ultimately what I'd be asking for is an increase of 3,200 and change, $3,206. I will say that puts me at pretty, I mean, that's balanced out pretty well. I won't have a whole lot of wiggle room for extra stuff. There's a few extra bucks that we'll have in regular ed supplies for anything unexpected that comes up. But I think that's, rather than coming up with that whole $7,700, I figured we could move some stuff around and make that a little bit more bearable. So that's it. The price on the teacher, obviously, is, what we've been told is $81,533. And like I said, the change to the budget, supplies and services would be $3,206. Fire away.
I'll rephrase that. Question from the committee. Let's be nice to Principal McCray. And Dina.
Good evening, Al.
Hi.
My concern, and I expressed this yesterday too, when the elementary school principals were here, is regarding the social and emotional issues that seem to become more prevalent each year and more involved. I think the principals at the elementary school have plans in place for that, but you've even indicated tonight that that is a big concern for you. Is the SPED teacher really going to be able to make those changes that you think you need? And I don't know, Dave, maybe you need to be involved in this conversation too. Do you have things in your presentation that to be honest, I haven't looked at your information yet. That's on my docket for tomorrow. Are there things that the district can be doing to kind of help with this? Because I see this as an unfortunate trend.
I hate to be cliche, but, you know, it's this is what it is. This is the culture of student we have. Their ability to kind of cope with things and move through things that maybe a generation ago we were able to do. It just isn't there. They get very much stuck. Our people are really good at working with kids, getting them to de-escalate, calm down. It's the moving on part that I'm trying to work on. I don't need a student services suite piled up with 6, 7 kids all at once, because when kids come in that have needs and might be crying or upset, they're on full display for everybody. So I just need a place to be able to move these kids out, and then also have a person that's able to be, you know, that's 1 year. Maybe the next year, you know, it's an uptick in students with spectrum disorders, and we have to be flexible and move people around and create a program for that. Yeah.
So can we just pause? So it's an Amber Alert. Everyone's phone's freaking out,
Oh, is
so.
that what okay. So to me, it's flexibility in programming that I'm trying to get after. Like I said, I kind of went back and forth. Do I need another social worker? I think the other piece to this is our social worker, who's had 30 years of experience, will be retiring. I have an opportunity to get someone in the building new. Don't get me wrong, Nancy does a great job. We're going to miss her. But, you know, having this teacher come in with a new social worker, there's a partnership that can be made there. So, you know, like I said, it's about having a place for students to go and the flexibility to do that so that they're not, you know, using the student services suite as a classroom, basically.
Yeah, so I guess I would agree with Al that in this particular instance, a teacher would be more beneficial and more hands-on and be able to provide those direct services. I think if you, I'm trying to think back of, this was probably early in my tenure, we had one social worker for the middle school and the high school that was bouncing around, and this is probably.
That's why she's retiring.
Probably. So we've steadily added to that, so now there's 2 counselors for the school. We've also, with the addition of the board-certified behavioral analyst, she spends at least a full day in the school trying to consult and work with teachers. But I think as being proactive as the kids move up from our more significant programs, such as the ASD in Newbury, we're going to need a different another classroom or another setting to program for some of those kids. Because right now, we're doing, Chris Estuccio has been a long-term employee who's done incredible work with kids with disabilities, and they, of course, feed into our high school program, and then a lot of kids go into our 18 to 22. But I think just given the number of kids that we need, that I think, I agree with Al, that a teacher would be more beneficial, given, the choices that we would have.
I think that last year at the high school, or for this current year, we funded what is now the LIFT program, what we're calling it the Bridge program. That's in essence, I think if Al were saying, what do I need? It's that LIFT program. I think the difference is with only 2 grade levels versus 4 grade levels, the teacher is the most important piece, because there is an adjustment counselor and a guidance counselor, those two, that if the academic piece is being minded and managed, then the social worker is able to do their job. So it is the exact same setup. At the high school, it's a licensed special educator and a clinical social worker that's staffing, or that is the LIFT program. So that's the basic need.
And I don't want anybody to think that I'm questioning what you're proposing, because you certainly know your schools, and I am not an educator. I just see that this seems to come up every year, and, recently in the news with the loss of a student at Newburyport, I don't want to see that happening, certainly not here, not anywhere, but, I think we need to keep a close eye on that, which I know you are.
A
but-
good way to put it in perspective is, because I don't want to take the regular teachers out of this, because they're doing an incredible job. I think, next month will be my 20th year here as an educator, and I've seen, there are kids right now being serviced in classrooms that probably 10 years ago would be in a program. But they're being managed in classrooms, we have things in place, the academics would be, fit for them. And so I think what we've just seen right now is it's just so overwhelming, this uptick in the students that just, like I said, they get stuck and they just can't get moving. We need some place to move them to keep them moving. So that's kind of if that helps at all.
Right, because I know, I've heard it from especially the elementary school principals in the past, that if a student, is stressed or whatever, dealing with anxiety, that they can't learn, and that's what we're supposed to be doing with them. And
Right.
I commend all of you, and the teachers especially, for the work that they do.
So like I say, the one important point here is it's the same issue, but depending on the grade level, the solution is different. So what is appropriate for a BCBA, for a primary age student, looks very different when you've got a 180-pound 8th grader sitting there in the middle school or at the high school level. So it's a very different world. So it's the same issue, universal pre-K through 12. It's what we have to put the appropriate staffing and responses in depending on the age of the student. Is that fair?
Maureen?
So the idea then, as you said, Brian, it's similar to the LIFT program in the high school. So this special education teacher would have their own classroom, and students would come in and out as needed during the day, week?
Correct. Be an academic setting rather than a student services setting.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, parents are like, well, is my child learning? And I'd like to be able to say, yeah, there's a classroom for them. Once they get back to their regular classrooms, it'd be great, but until then, we can work with them in there, and that teacher knows what they're doing, and they know the curriculum, and that's a nice answer to be able to have.
It's just another way to keep our students in our schools and having to send them out and spend a lot more money. So just want to make that comment.
Now, I referenced 2 students that have been put out for 45-day assessments. I can't guarantee that they wouldn't have anyways with this in place. It would have been nice to be able at the table to be able to offer it, and I wasn't able to offer it.
Deb?
Just a clarification. You mentioned, social, emotional, and then special education. In my mind, I don't use those synonymously, but it sounds like you are, because it came up last night, I think, when Jim was doing the Salisbury presentation. There was a difference between what Jim felt he needed for his students and what Chris and Beth said they needed for their students. So can you clarify for me, because I'm hearing social emotional and special ed in the same,
Well,
Place.
there's an increase in the amount of students on IEPs for social emotional disabilities, if that makes sense. And I just would also add that in the regular ed population, there's a lot of social emotional need as well. And there's a lot of kids that are on 504s or maybe not on any identified plan, but they have some struggles of their own. And most of them we work with and they get through the year okay. But it's just a lot more students that access our student services than in prior years.
right. I
And on
understand.
top of that, we have an increased amount of special ed students in general coming into the building, so everybody's caseload rises up, and, so it's a nice option to be able to keep those caseloads at a manageable level as well.
Right, I understand, and I
Yeah.
agree. So you're looking at one person that would be working with special education students who had social emotional issues and regular ed students who also had social emotional issues?
Possibly, yep.
Okay.
Tina?
One of the things that was brought to my attention recently from a few parents was the lack of like PTAs at the middle school and high school level. And just looking at the numbers from the presentations that we got from the elementary schools last night, Salisbury PTA contributed close to 80,000, Pine Grove was 32, NES was 28,000. That was a total of $140,000 from PTAs at the elementary school levels. And so looking at some of these line items in the budget, especially for supplies, I'm wondering, and my hope is if we had those PTA, that support implemented at the middle school, high school level,
Right.
they could be contributing on top of what TEF is trying to do to free up some of that money in the budget. Why has there not been?
I'm glad you brought this up, because I was going to add that into my comment. My school council, there's a parent on our school council, Allison Irving.
Right.
She also did some student teaching in our school this year. Anyway, she's very Triton motivated, and I actually have a meeting with her, and I don't know, she's telling me quite a few parents and some teachers on the 28th to discuss starting another 7 through 12 PTA. I don't know if you got that. Yeah, you got that. Yeah, so, yes, so that's it went away. Basically, we had a really good motivated group of parents. Their kids moved up. When they graduated, they stopped because obviously they were done with Triton, and there was no one kind of behind. We tried for a few years to get it going. I kind of mentioned it most years, and it's just, people are busy, and, So and I always said it's going to take a motivated parent to kind of get the thing going and get on it, and that's what's happened. So I'm optimistic that we'll have something in place by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that'll be great with what the
Definitely a lot.
PTAs have done moving up.
The one we had was great. They did a lot of stuff for the school.
The other person who's been involved in helping some of the spending just in the last 24 to 48 hours is Dr. Champy, who's on the national
Right.
PTA. So he's been in contact with Allison over the last few days to make sure that we have a good strategy.
Other questions? All right, I have a couple. I want to come back to that special education teacher. Do you know about how many students you'd expect that teacher to service?
It would be just guessing.
Ballpark.
If it's in place right now, I could think of 5 or 6 students that would access that classroom pretty regularly.
Okay, so on an ongoing basis. All right, and I know one of the things you had mentioned in here was the students coming up from the autism spectrum disorder programs, presumably the ones at Newbury. What is the expectation, I guess, from those parents? I'm wondering, as those, because there is definitely a significant number of them with those, 19, I think, at those Newbury programs right now. What's the expectation for parents? And maybe this is a David question, as those students move up to the middle school, as far as the supports, and is there a risk for those students that are coming up of not being able to support them with what's in place now and what's being asked for, and having those students move to an out-of-district placement?
So I think up until this point, we've been able to use the existing resources that we have. A lot of the kids that come up from the AST programs go into Chris's program, and they've been able to, but she does have a wide variety of kids that she services, so sometimes I think we run the risk of trying to, and she's, believe me, she's done a phenomenal job with the amount of kids that she's been able to support, but I could see a point in the future when we may be, when some of the kids with, if they still have existing needs requiring intensive ABA services, really needing to be in a self-contained program, I can see the need when we will have to probably put something in place into the high school. But right now, I think what's also happening, which is the good news, is the kids coming from Newberry are, after 6 or 7 years of intensive programming, are making instructional and social gain so that they're able to access the general classroom. Because that's always the goal, because some kids may start off as a 3-year-old who can't make eye contact, can't imitate, doesn't have any verbal skills, and then through the work that's done, the intensive work that's done at Newberry, by the time they hit 6th grade, they're ready for a program that offers some time outside the classroom, but the goal is still always to keep them integrated in with their peers as much as possible, and then they also transition to the high school program. But right now, we haven't had the need to have a specific ABA-based program at the middle school. But I think if we have a cohort of significant kids that are transitioning, that may be something we need to look at. But right now, it's the kids are, because of the intensive work done in the elementary school, they're making the intensive gains. So.
All right, thank you. And I guess kind of along that same line, are we assuming that that the students that are accessing this professional that you're proposing going to be kind of is it a transitional step, I guess is what I'm getting at? So for the students that are coming into the Student Center right now and essentially hanging out there, is this LIFT program-ish, where we're anticipating being able to transition those students back into classrooms? Or is this a situation where you see those students being there on a more permanent basis?
I think our goal is always to transition kids back into the regular classroom. I think it's where they belong. But it would definitely be a point to get them from stuck to someplace where they are in front of a teacher, smaller group, not so chaotic perhaps, maybe take away a lot of the transitions throughout the day, and they can have the academics brought to them and they'd be in front of a teacher rather than a social worker. So yes, the goal would be to get them back into the regular classes. I think where most of them want to be, they just got to get through what they're dealing with to get there. So
Okay.
yes, that would be the goal.
And at the high school, I know we haven't had, and maybe this is a, whatever question, unprepared, but I know we haven't had a real update on how that program is going. Is it being fully utilized for what? I don't even know who to look at. Okay, all right, you'll cover that? All right. Okay. And then just a quick question on the Chromebook cart leases. The increases, are those for carts that had finished their contract and then were starting a new contract on carts?
The first Chromebook carts that I leased are coming up for renewal.
Okay.
And that price has gone up, and then I have to absorb the 2 Chromebook carts that are in place for the 8th grade civics curriculum.
Okay.
And next year, I'll have to pick up another cart that's been paid for by the TEF, so.
Okay.
I'll be
That's
back
what I
next-
assumed.
I'll be back
because
next year for that.
They get locked, I know, for the price of the contract, so then I was confused about what was going where. And I just want to kind of make a philosophical comment here, that in a perfect world, we wouldn't have our PTAs picking up a lot of these costs. I mean, I get it, we are where we are, but that expectation, it's very sad that we have to have that expectation because it shouldn't be there, that they're picking up these types of costs. They should be doing enrichment and all that other stuff, so. All right. Any other comment from the committee? No, seeing none. All right, thank you, Principal McRae.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
And I saw scribbled multicolored notes, I believe, over there, so I'm looking forward to this one.
It's always extra.
Principal Kelly for the high school.
Scribbled multi.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I want to start by thanking Brian and Kim for their advice through the process, thanking Tim and Catherine, Scott and Megan for their advice as they've gone through the budget process, to thank my program coordinators for their detailed analysis for each of their departments, and to thank Beth Diamento with our school council. So I want to start by highlighting some of the successes and things that we're currently working on at the high school. One of the things that is going to be a continued theme that you'll hear me come back to time and time again is our desire to increase student voice and choice throughout our school, really highlighting the notion of student agency as being crucial in what we do. One of the ways that we've recently gone about doing this, we put in place a new format for our teachers to propose new courses, whether they're new electives or new core course offerings. And we had a panel of students, guidance counselors, administrators, and teachers to hear the new course proposals. In total, we have 11 new courses that look like they're going to be moving forward in our program of studies, and what our hope and desire is to gradually continue to reduce our number of study halls while increasing our number of elective offerings, recognizing that we want our students to be actively involved throughout the day and enriching their learning and their opportunities. Our students were thrilled with the offerings that our teachers were proposing, and our teachers were excited and invigorated by the opportunity to be able to pitch ideas that they might have wanted to have taught for a long time. So just a quick sampling of some of the classes that were proposed: a creative writing class, a travel literature course, a course on memoirs, an American Studies course that could theoretically be co-taught by an English teacher and a history teacher, a course on seniors designing independent projects and independent studies, an immunology course, a chemistry in the community course, an American history through film, a jewelry design course, a Spanish culture and conversation course, and a statistics course that would be taught at the CP level. So kind of a wide variety of courses coming up in each of our departments, and so some really exciting opportunities that are there, and that should be going forward for our students depending on course requests and course enrollment. Some of the other things that we've been working on, so we've had tremendous collaboration on the part of our program coordinators and Megan Ober as our guidance director around finding ways to build common planning time into our schedule. It's been something that's been a refrain in our school improvement plan for the last several years, and it's something that we really want to see happen and move into place in the coming schedule to really move forward with new curriculum and improving common curriculum that we already have in place for our courses. We need to be providing our teachers with time in their day and in their schedule to meet and collaborate with one another. We've also seen a tremendous increase in the utilization of technology in the classroom, and what we're starting to see come forward is some of the fruits of, I think, a lot of labor, where technology is starting to get to the point of being transformative in the educational experience that is happening in the high school, as opposed to being something that's a replacement for a more traditional tool that would have been used prior. And so we're starting to see that really taking root and taking form. This fall, we had a successful NEASC visit, so we had our collaborative conference in November, and they left with really positive feedback for us and for our school. They highlighted a lot of the ways in which we try to reach out and go above and beyond to support students, and they saw the passion in our teachers and the desire for us to continue to grow and develop and evolve. Some of the things that they highlighted in their report were things that we had already identified in our self-reflection. So when we do get the final report, I think the major areas that they highlighted for us to continue working on are the need for instituting common planning time within our schedule, finding stability in our personnel, having stability within our budget, and having improvements to our facility, which are all things that I think we went into the visit and the collaborative conference knowing would be things that they would recommend and would address through the course of the report. One of the other major successes that we've had over the first half of the year is the progress that we've been making on our vision of a graduate as a high school. So we started that, again, thinking about student agency, having students involved with our faculty in the development of the first few rounds of the process. We're going to continue to have students involved. We're coming closer and closer to identifying the core competencies that we want all of our students to leave Triton schools with. And once we get to a place that we're ready to present that out, we'll certainly be looking to present that forward to the community and to the committee here. But we're going to be looking for feedback not just from our faculty, but also from our student body, from parents in the community, from community leaders and business professionals within the community. And so that's going to be something that will really look to drive the school going forward. So our vision of a graduate, we don't want to just be a static document that sits on a shelf. We want it to be infused into everything we do. It should be part of our school handbook. It should be part of our program of studies. It should be part of our daily instruction. It should really drive our practice. We've continued some of the professional development for our faculty around our response to the Allen Bloom Report and how we provide special education services to all students. We've done this both with full faculty groups and also with a small focus group. You know, the district has worked some with a focus group of teachers and educators from across the district. We also have had the opportunity to continue some of that work with a small high school-based focus group, and we're starting to really start to see gains with that group, which is really exciting. The other thing, and my last major success that was just brought up a moment ago, was around the implementation of the LIFT program. And so we're really grateful for the program's funding and our ability to offer this to our students. We've seen a number of students successfully complete the program, and several others that are still within the program. The goal is always for students to return from entry into the program into the generalized setting within about 10 weeks. And we've been able to see that in a number of instances. Each child is different, and so what each child needs in terms of the longevity is different, but we've certainly been able to find successes there. And I actually think we have at least a few students that we've been able to keep in district as a result, because we have something that we can offer that meets that same level of therapeutic need. And so I think that's been something that probably has already realized the cost of implementation. And so that has been a tremendous success. The two professionals that we have leading the program, Vic Fidler and Kara Briley, are fantastic educators and have done a tremendous job with our students to keep them here, keep them safe, keep them supported, and to communicate out with families at every step of the way. So now, just some areas to address throughout the course of the budget, and in developing the budget, some of the things that I outlined kind of go hand in hand with some long-term thinking and planning for what our vision of education at the high school is and what we want to see going forward. One of the areas that I think will continue to be addressed is our use of and how we implement technology. I'm hopeful, and we haven't come to this end point yet with the group, the Technology Committee Working Group, but I'm hopeful that from a high school standpoint, where we end with that group is that there'll be a recommendation of moving one-to-one at some point in the future. For me, it's an issue of access and equity. Having a device is the learning tool that every child needs in a high school setting at this point in time. I won't speak for some of the other principals, but I would guess that some of the other principals might say something similar about their schools as well. For our students to remain on equal footing with their peers from across the state, this is an area that we need to move into. We have students that don't have access and equity when they leave the school, and more our teachers, as we've increased our technology and our expectations about the use of technology in the classroom, are asking students to continue utilizing that when students leave. And for our students that don't have access, it becomes much more challenging for them to be able to stay on equal footing with their peers. The first staffing position that's addressed in the FY21 budget that is listed on page 5 is around, that I want to speak about tonight, is around hiring a technology integration specialist. I believe personally that if we're going to invest and have significant investment in technology, we need to make sure that we're utilizing it appropriately within the school setting, and that if we are providing every student with a device, or at this point in time, we have about 400 Chromebooks in the building. If we're providing that many devices within the building, we need to be really supporting our faculty in how to best utilize that resource. I see the technology integration specialist position as someone that can provide ongoing and in-the-moment professional development. What we've heard over and over from teachers is that they don't need professional development around specific technology 3 months in advance from when they need it. They need that professional development in the week before they're going to use it. And so if we want people utilizing new and varied technologies in the classroom, we need to be providing them training and support in order to do so. Additionally, a lot of the new curriculum that we're purchasing at a district level has a significant technology component to it, and we currently don't have enough staffing to help support that need. And so where so much of the resource has moved in that direction, we really need to be able to continue to provide that support. Additionally, a lot of the textbook purchases that are currently happening, they've started to switch their model where what you're really paying for is the online subscription going forward. And ultimately, we're going to need someone with an educational background, because I see the technology integration specialist more coming from the educational side with a significant expertise in technology. But someone on the educational side to help us manage and implement and support the implementation of all of these resources that we're investing in. Additionally, the position I look at as being someone that could help manage a student tech team, help manage help manage fixing devices, help manage supporting technology around the building, students being given an opportunity to really learn in a hands-on practical application kind of way, to really make sure that we're giving them opportunities to see what the work that they might want to do is actually like. Additionally, especially in the coming year, I see the position of technology integration specialist as being someone that could help us with making any sort of decision or determination around the best way to implement a one-to-one strategy, if that is a direction that we're able to move forward in. The second staffing position that I wanted to discuss is a technical education teacher. I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about and that I think is an area of need is making sure that we have more classes available for our students who may not be interested in going straight to college, or who may be more interested in moving into more technical fields. So thinking that the person coming in a technical education role could be teaching shop-related classes, engineering classes, robotics classes, culinary arts classes, in theory, at some point, design classes, really looking at what types of opportunities we have available for our students. One of the things that I would really love to do is be able to expand our programming in some of those areas and be able to keep children in the district who might otherwise be choicing out or selecting other options at the high school level because they are more interested in the tech side of things. If we have some of those offerings available to us here, we might be able to capture more of those students and keep them with us, educate them here, allow them to experience all the other wonderful things that we have to offer. If people want to flip to page 7, some of the other things that I wanted to highlight and identify. One of the first things that you'll notice is different. There's a reduction in the line item around accreditation. We had additional money that was put into that account last year to account for the costs that we'd incur hosting our NEASC Collaborative Conference visit this year, where we're not going to be hosting a NEASC visit next year. We don't need the same level of funding there. You'll also notice a major shift in the line item around instructional technology services. And I kind of want to explain what my thinking was around that. So our past practice in terms of how we were organizing monies for Chromebook carts, money was coming from different places within the budget. And I thought it was important to kind of organize all of that. We're looking at, rather than paying some of those bills as they come up during the course of the year, encumbering all that money July 1, and making sure that we have kind of an organized and efficient way to manage all of the different leases. You'll see in the detailed version a few pages later. Let me just grab the right page. We've got 7 different leases, all of which have different costs associated with them based on the number of Chromebooks and the specific device, and all of which have different dates that they come due. And so to really make sure that we're keeping track of that, I want to make sure that we're funding that all from a consistent place and kind of organizing it in a consistent fashion. One of the other major areas of cost and expense that you see, and that's relatively consistent cost year after year, is some of the cost that comes up in our general education supplies. The 2 major driving costs in our general education supplies are currently and will always be our science classes and our visual and performing arts classes. Both of those classes or sets of classes have significant consumable resources that will be utilized each year. I actually think our science classes could use even more consumables. And as they've done a really nice job of trying to work within the budget that they've been given. And there are times where when they're doing labs and they're doing dissections, they're choosing to have larger lab groups and fewer animals that they're dissecting, because they want to make sure that they stay within their budget. And ideally, we'd like to have more students with more ability to have that hands-on tactile moment of doing each of those pieces. And so I think they've done a nice job of trying to keep within their consumable materials budget that they've been given, but ultimately, we'd like to see more of that. I actually think that as our science departments revamped a lot of their curriculum, especially in biology, we've already seen some of the gains in our MCAS scores, and I think we'll continue to see some of that. But some of that is also attributed to the investments that we've made in their resources, the investments we've made in textbooks, the investments we've made in their consumables, so that the students are better able to participate in lab activities. I think we've really done a nice job of highlighting our programming there and making sure that there's a really hands-on approach in each of those classes that our students are gravitating towards currently. One of the other places for discussion, we have several different courses that are looking to purchase new textbooks in the coming year, and I think it's important to share just some of the places that we're looking to do so. So our AP Physics textbooks are out of date and no longer would be in compliance with AP standards. Our consumer math books, I think, are almost 30 years out of date. And when you look in those books and the minimum wage is $4.25, you have significant concern about whether or not they're being used accurately. And so those just take a lot of teacher work to make sure that the information students are getting then is updated and accurate, as opposed to having something that really is reflective of the time and day we're living in. We also have world history textbooks that we'll be looking to purchase, and that's something that you'll hear more about tomorrow night in Kim Croto's budget. But I do want to say that the way that we've got structured for the purchase of textbooks and some of our curriculum materials is challenging at times, because if we do need to purchase a full grade level of materials, within the high school budget, we don't really have the resources available to purchase a full set of world history textbooks for 170 students. We have no place that we'd be able to pull that much money together and still make that work. So it's something that we're always going to be looking to work either in conjunction with central office, or we'd have to at some point in the future look at how we organize that line item and those resources. Just to highlight quickly before wrapping up some of the needed capital improvements. So there are a few things that I look at there as immediate concerns that I think we should be addressing as soon as possible. The ventilation in our ceramics room is in need of significant repair, and I would not want firing the kiln to become hazardous to our teacher who's doing it, or our students who are going to be in the room while we're firing the kiln. And so we need to make sure that we have that properly ventilated and fixed going forward. The stairwell treads, as you come down the stairs, I'm sure most of you have seen it coming down the stairs to meetings here, but we have a number of stairwell treads that are torn up and ripped up and needing to be replaced. Just as a general safety hazard, we want to make sure that those are safe for all of our students and for anyone else who is entering the building. And then, while we have other, I think, significant concerns in terms of, and needs in terms of capital improvement, so, concerns with our windows, concerns with, in terms of the glazing and the leaking that takes place coming through, the heat loss that exits the windows, the issues with roofing and heating throughout the building. Those are all going to be things that are going to be better addressed in specifics through the facilities assessment that is just wrapping up now, and that's something that I believe Brian will be presenting to the committee in short order, in the coming months. And so, while I think there's a number of different things that will be outlined for capital improvements, the ones I really wanted to make sure I highlighted were things that were kind of immediate and of need, and also not the ones that will most likely incur significant cost. Replacing all the windows has a significant cost to it. Replacing a roof on a school of this size has a significant cost to it. But things that I think we really do need to take care of in the immediate, being those two that I highlighted there. And that's where I'm wrapping up for right now.
Questions from the committee? Go ahead, Maureen.
I have a simple question, I think. There's a small increase for the health services, and I just noted that you wrote that there's a need for the nurses handing out food. Is this for students that are not receiving free and reduced lunch, or I guess?
It's kind of a mix of a number of things. So some of it is that, some of it is students that are coming in first thing in the day complaining of stomach and headaches. Oftentimes when our nurse asks, the response is that they haven't had anything to eat or drink yet that day. And her philosophy is that she would rather first try to give them a small snack and a drink rather than medicating them. And most often, that's successful, and so rather than continuing to medicate students when she doesn't feel like it's medically appropriate, she tries that as a first,
Okay,
as a
great.
first
I didn't
go-to.
know that. Thank you.
The other thing that was included there in the increase in the health services, we've started to incur additional costs in terms of helping to provide feminine hygiene products for our students. And historically, there had been a partnership with a few different companies that have kind of pulled back on what they're willing to donate and supply. And while they've pulled back on what they're willing to donate and supply, our need hasn't decreased. And so it's not a good place when Nadine is trying to ration or make sure that we have enough to get through the year. So we want to make sure that we are able to make this a comfortable and supportive environment for all of our students.
Erin?
You have on the capital improvement request, repair the middle and high school bleachers. Is that the set of bleachers that are in the gymnasiums, or is it out at the athletic field?
In the gymnasiums. In the gym, so they, my understanding is, and Tim can probably speak better to this, but when, once you pull them out, they're very hard to get back in. And so our custodial services try to keep them in as long as possible, but once you pull them out, they're not easily movable.
So is that a repair cost or a?
Correct.
Okay, not a replacement. And then I just wanted to also comment, like Maureen had earlier with the athletic programs, I know that there is a big booster for the performing arts program. It would be helpful to have a list of items in here that the boosters do help offset the costs for.
Really? No other questions from the committee? Dina?
Plenty.
Sorry.
Plenty of questions, but I think they're already answered in here.
Okay. Paul's got one, I think.
So first, let me congratulate you on taking a new approach and the new courses that need to come about. I went to a national school business, school committee conference years ago, and I sat next to people from Montana and other farming states. And, it's until you sit there and talk to these people, you don't realize that they think 50% going to college and 50% going to certificate programs, technical programs after high school is the appropriate thing to do. So I applaud you for that, but at the same time, just fill in for me if you can. When you talk about 10 new classes, including something like memoirs, who's going to teach them? What are they going to replace? Curriculum maps for those new courses? I mean, I got to get my arms around all that. How does that come about?
So in terms of the curriculum, those are all things that need to be developed. So where the first step was in the proposal was for teachers to identify a course overview that could be included in the program of studies, potential units that would be included in the course, potential costs that could be associated with it that the department would have to figure out within their budget, what grade level, what course level it would fall at, whether it's an honors class, a CP class, an AP class, what level it would fall at. So the curriculum would still be something that would be in need of developing by teachers. So ideally, you have them propose what they want, have it either approved or not approved before they design out a full course, which takes an extensive amount of time to develop and run. In terms of the numbers, I think what would most likely happen is you're looking at some of those classes potentially. So in the English classes, our memoir class, our travel literature class, and the American Studies classes would all be core classes that would be the 11-12 offerings. And so the numbers there would probably be offset with kids in other classes kind of balancing out and redistributing. It'd be more a function of what students were signing up for that would drive which classes ran versus versus really having an impact on increasing or decreasing numbers in a different place. Some of the other classes, so our immunology class, our American history and film, our jewelry design, our Spanish conversation, our creative writing class, those would all be additional elective offerings. And so what could theoretically be an outcome if you're going through the process and seeing how the numbers play out through course registration, you might end up having some of our core classes move from what we have as an average of about 18 to about 20, and having those increase slightly, but have teachers be able to then teach additional elective classes while decreasing our number of study halls.
Okay, so one of my concerns is just, we talk about, on the one hand, finding more planning time for teachers, and then at the same time offering additional electives. But it would be more the notion that a teacher would swap out a course that they're teaching now for one of these newly approved courses, so it wouldn't like cut into their time. Is that fair to say? It wouldn't put
yes,
another teaching day on them, or teaching time on them, would it?
No, it wouldn't be increasing their teaching time. So if our teachers each teach 5 classes on average, so the teachers that had proposed these will most likely be the teachers that will be teaching these. But they might teach that and then 4 sections of other things that they had previously taught.
And I don't know if this is a Brian question or
So can I say one more thing on that? So just unlike the high school and really the middle school now with the rotating schedule, when you have a course offering that offers electives and options, the number of teachers remains generally static, but the number of sections between departments tends to shift year over year. So you might need 3 less sections in science based on what students elect to take, but then need 3 more history. So it's not, every teacher will still teach 5 classes, 1 planning and 1 prep. It doesn't change the overall. It's just which department needs more based on interest and need of students.
And I know that the final green light for this is students choosing a certain elective, but how does the process get finalized? Does Kim or Brian or all 3 of you put your heads together that, yes, this program is a go? I mean, how is that going to come about? Or this elective is a go, or is that just a decision
So as we
that you make?
go through the process, we look at course request numbers at several different intervals. So we'll have initial requests that will come through, both primary and secondary requests, especially around some of the elective offerings. There'll be times where, based on the primary and secondary requests, once we start scheduling in number of sections, because we'll have certain things that will be fixed. We'll need a certain number of, based on the number of 9th graders, we have a certain number of world history classes. And so some of those will be fixed, and then we'll have the ability to play around with the other parts of the schedule. But when we get down to it, we look at, which courses have requests that are usually a typical threshold is about 10 students enrolled in them or wanting to enroll in them. And if we have less than that, then we have to have a significant conversation about, what is the course, what is the programming that it's associated with? Do we want to make sure that we keep that programming going forward? So if it's an AP course and it's got 7 kids, and we think that it's, the program is just starting up off the ground floor, we might choose to run that because we see a real strong need for it going forward, and we're trying to build viability in a program. So those are all difficult decisions. They're decisions that are made in collaboration with Megan Ober, who's our kind of scheduling guru and guidance director. Myself, Scott Brennan, Catherine Daw would all be part of that conversation. And while I haven't gone through it here, I'm assuming that at some point, Kim is the curriculum person for the district, is going to be involved in those conversations as well.
So as far as we would have a conversation at the end too, when we say, again, we're not involved in the direct all of the scheduling, but when it comes down to, at the end, to say, okay, these are making the number up, 150 classes running, these are the class sizes, to look at numbers and class sizes, that would be a decision we would make in regards to staffing. Do we need less staffing, more staffing? Obviously, generally, it's not more staffing, less staffing, moving between departments, so that we're looking at class sizes from a budgetary perspective overall.
So I have about another hour of questions, but I'm only going to ask one more series of questions for you. No, I think this is wonderful with the direction that you're heading. So we have Whittier Tech. And we have, we used to call it Essex Aggie. Heidi Riccio will yell at me for not knowing.
North Shore Technical High School,
North Shore
Essex
Technical.
North Shore is the
Okay.
name.
Is there another one? Years ago, I took a welding course behind the Market Basket in a building out back there. They used to call it North Shore Regional Vocational Technical High School. Or is that part of
So-
Essex Aggie?
So Essex Aggie existed as a county school.
Right?
North Shore Technical High School was the North Shore, Beverly, like literally Cape Ann's version of Whittier for us. Now, a regional technical and a county agricultural combined, so it's a complete cluster as far as how that structure works. Our students, if they're going on the technical program, have to go to Whittier. If they want to go agricultural, they go to Essex North Shore.
Okay.
So if they go exploratory freshman year, thinking, not sure what I want to do, but then determine they want to go technical, they have to transfer to Whittier or apply to be waived in tuition based on all that. So wonderful school. I would dream of the funding levels, but it's an amazing resource. But it's both the so our students have access to that program for the, I think, 12 agricultural programs that are there.
And so here's my question with that backdrop. I like the idea of an instructor that is a technical instructor. I think it's great for the school to go in that direction, but I think we really need to be really, really prudent about what programs we try to address because, you know, if you have this wonderful program at Essex Tech and you have this other wonderful program at Whittier, we're never going to compete with them. And I know that everything's competition, but I just think we really need to be prudent going forward and not trying to take on programs that, you know, surpass anything that we could put together from a capital standpoint. Like you talk
Absolutely.
about culinary, I mean, I don't know how you could begin to run a culinary program here.
Well, I think it's a difference
Versus-
between, I don't want to speak for Patrick, but I think it's
Right.
a difference between us, a student who's moving towards a technical career
Right.
and wants to come out with an apprenticeship license as an electrician, or someone who's looking for other experiences and opportunities, wants to
Just get
graduate
exposed
from a
to it.
traditional, and exposed, take
Okay.
a culinary ed, take a tech ed, take others. I don't see us, hey, things can happen, populations change, but I don't see us offering, culinary and being able, if you've seen the kitchen and the restaurant at Essex Tech,
Right.
oh my. So I don't think that's where Patrick is heading.
No,
I'm
but-
sure we'd all love that program here, but that's not where we're going. It's
So
an
anytime
experience.
I've ever polled students about what elective offerings they wish we offered but don't have, the number one response is always a culinary program. So almost universally, students have that as something that they wish every traditional high school had more of and that they had the opportunity to learn about while in high school. And so having the ability to offer that, regardless of whether or not students went on into the culinary field is something that I know they're passionate about wanting to have that experience in the high school setting. So I agree, it would be really challenging to offer something that was able to compete with those programs, but I do think our students would like it and would want it. And also, there's the potential that if you offer it in some format at the school, you're going to have some students who are on the fence that are going to choose to stay because when given their druthers, they'd rather remain with their friends, their peer cohort, and move forward in a setting that they might have previously envisioned for themselves growing up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Paul? You sure? Okay. Dina?
I did think of one. One thing that I can't get from what I've read here is the comment about the library and maybe redesigning how this is configured. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so Jennifer and I have had a lot of conversation just about libraries and in general in modern libraries and where they're headed and how the space is configured and utilized. Our library is a tremendous space and our students are utilizing it, but in kind of a traditional way. I think you're seeing a lot of libraries move towards almost like a media hub or a tech hub with maker spaces that are infused with flexible seating, with flexible, at times, classroom spaces. It's a space, we've got high ceilings where you could utilize space differently if we had if we looked to address how we were furnishing it and be able to really reimagine and redesign the space. One of the things that we were able to do over the summer that has really been of tremendous benefit already was partner with an organization that repurposes office furniture when offices are remodeling or closing down. And we have several classrooms that we're able to outfit with furniture that is all in casters and can move and roll and be reconfigured in really unique ways, but also in really convenient ways for the learning that takes place. All of these tables are on fixed legs and are difficult to move, and when you start dragging them around, they're going to break rather quickly. The furniture in here is all old furniture, and I think we have opportunity and an organization that we can partner with to help do some of that redesign and rethought around what the space could be at a really affordable rate. Because what we ended up having to pay for all of the furniture that was donated was the delivery cost, and that was it. And so for this $1,500, we are able to redesign 7 or 8 classrooms, fully with furniture, which would be tens of thousands of dollars normally.
So is this something that you will be proposing at some point, or where are you in the
Yeah,
state?
potentially. So we're really at the start. I think when we look at what Jennifer has in her budget for the library next year, she would like to start thinking about how to design the space and really be able to reconfigure the space to make it work best for our students and for any type of organization that's utilizing the space, but really to make it a meaningful space for learning that takes place. And we have a number of teachers that are in here on a relatively consistent basis, co-teaching and collaborating with Jennifer. She's really well utilized by our staff, but we could also take better advantage of the space, not just her as the resource, in terms of the collaboration that we're doing.
Tina?
So this may be in the infancy stages, just going through the lot of talk in terms of technology and future goals and how that's important for the students. But I'm wondering, in terms of the exploring the desire to move to a one-to-one model, if you have any other schools in the state that have done that successfully that we can model after, or what that timeline looks like?
Yes, I came from one and have gone through it. So it depends on how you choose to go through it, and there's a number of different ways you could go about doing it. And again, I'm kind of jumping the gun, and Kim, if you want, or Brian, if you want to jump in on some of this, go ahead, but I don't mind spearheading it as well. So you can move forward with it, either continuing to lease the devices or looking to purchase the devices. Different districts have chosen to go about it different ways. Both have pros and cons. If you're leasing the devices, oftentimes you're doing it with a service agreement that's part of that lease, and so if a device is broken or damaged, it gets replaced in the process, and you have a fixed cycle of renewal with it. Districts that purchase the devices, oftentimes they either are purchasing as well an insurance program, or they're having a self-run insurance program, essentially, where they collect a yearly fee from students. I know we're trying to move away from fees, but a yearly fee from students that is the insurance on the device. So I came from a district where it was a $40 annual fee to have insurance on the device. Families could opt in or opt out. About 85% of families opted in to pay that, and any damage done to the computer was then picked up by that insurance fee, unless the student was maliciously damaging the device on a repeated basis. Most of the damage that happens to Chromebooks when kids have them all the time, it's cracked screens and broken keyboards, and those are things that are relatively inexpensive on Chromebooks to replace and swap, and easy to swap out. It was something that I had experience with a tech team that the kids were the ones doing all the repair on the devices, and had been trained and were able to replace screens, swap out keyboards, wipe and reformat the devices, and get them turned around and back in the hands of their peers within a day or two. So it can happen in a couple of different ways, depending on funding. Some schools choose to roll it out over a 4-year period. Some schools choose to do it over a 2-year period. Some schools choose to do it all at once. It really depends on the funding and what we would need for an increase in our budget to be able to make that happen. As I said before, we have about 400 Chromebooks in the building already, so we're really looking for about another 280 to make that move to one-to-one. And in my opinion, I think what you would need to do is provide that device at the start of the year to every student, and it's their device for the year. They have to take care of it and manage it and make sure that it's a device that they're bringing into the classroom on a daily basis, and that our teachers are already utilizing the devices on a near daily basis, some more so than others, but there's still the scarcity of resources. So our English department, every day, it's who signs up fastest for the devices, and they're scheduled out months in advance at this point for devices in their classroom, because it's a fixed number that they have available to them within the department, and they all feel like they have a need on a daily basis to have it. And so they play well with each other around it, but each of those classes has need and sees tremendous value in what they're doing, not just in a, as I said before, in a way that replaces something that we had previously done, but more in a transformative way. And so I think there's tremendous value to looking at this long-term and to investing in it long-term, but it's about making decisions as to how it best gets implemented and if it's something that the committee and the district feels like it's appropriate to move forward with.
So we did that quick back-of-the-envelope math. So to start a lease so we started with the freshman class, roughly $18,000 per year for the lease. That's devices, insured, that's assuming it, like we were doing very quick back-of-the-envelope math. Insurance, basically white glove service, so anything that happens, HP will, or Lenovo, whenever replaces it. Those students then keep that device for 4 years. At the end, there's very little value, but the student could buy it out for whatever the trade-in value is, or they turn it back in and we trade it back. So if we did that every year, the freshman class gets a lease, it's $18,000 the first year. The second year, we have to pay $18,000 again for them. We pay another $18,000. The third year, we're paying $18,000. And then the fourth year, we're paying $18,000. So by the fourth year, the total cost is $72,000. And then either those go back or get bought out, and we start a new lease for $18,000. So in that vicinity of $75,000, call it, if we could work up to that, phase it in over 4 years, you could basically provide a one-to-one device for every student in this high school. So that's just literally back-of-the-envelope math, phasing in it over 4 years.
But even with that, we're already funding about half of that.
Through other various.
Through other various things. So it's already accounted for, about half of that is already accounted for in our budget.
So then there would be other, as you go to subscription-based, right? So we're replacing texts with subscription-based. A, the subscription is recurring, which isn't good, but B, it is good because it's recurring and updated all the time, and, we don't have textbooks with the USSR, which I don't believe we have anymore. But, so that, that discussion is gone because the context in the text is always current.
I was going to say, do you have any more follow-up, or are you?
Well, to that point, I'm wondering too, that makes a big difference financially when you're talking about, the world history books and the math books that have a minimum wage of $4.25, and that problem kind of goes away
Correct.
with the one-to-one.
Correct.
Yes, but I
Right?
think the money that Patrick's talking about, the money that he reallocated within the leases, I think we would very quickly absorb that money in new subscriptions and services. So I think, again, very back of the envelope, we would need to, all of the lease cost for the devices would need to be new money, and that existing money would very quickly be encumbered for other subscriptions that don't exist right now. And again, once they're there, and they live in perpetuity, but we no longer deal with outdated anything.
I have one more follow-up question. Are there any metrics around schools that have the one-to-one in terms of test scores or an increase in their test scores because of there's?
Not that
I'm
I've
just-
seen.
I feel because it's a fairly new thing going one-to-one,
Although
I
it would be,
imagine. Just because the
I think if
testing's
I
done.
were guessing, the districts that were the earliest adopters were also some of the more affluent districts across the state. So if you're trying to prove correlation, I think it would be difficult because you already have advantage that's there based on law.
And can I just add some of the articles that we have been reviewing with the tech committee? There's been a few that have discussed the need for a technology person to help teachers integrate these devices with some of the newer curriculum that's available. For certain teachers can access maybe 30 to 40%. Sometimes you'll have somebody that can access even more that is on the particular platform, but that is a really important position to have in place as you are supporting teachers on a regular, daily basis. Not like they said in the summer, people are free and the time is there, but it's really day-to-day that people need to go in there and things are changing. So to have that person is key to make sure that the devices are used to the maximum capacity that they can be used for learning.
Okay, I saw lots of hands. Who's up next? Maureen?
I just have a quick curiosity question, really. In your previous district that was one-to-one, were students allowed to have personal cell phones in the classroom?
They were, although it was almost always at teacher discretion. So there were times where the phone was the more appropriate device to use than the Chromebook. So in a physics lab, if you're doing like stop motion to see the rate of speed that something's coming down a plane, it makes more sense to be using your cell phone camera that's better able to pick that up than your Chromebook. And so in each of the cases, it was more about teacher need, teacher discretion. We had a number of English classes, and there's an English class that's currently running there this year that was around audio storytelling, where they were doing podcasting through their apps on their cell phone that had been downloaded. So there were things like that were being utilized for educational purposes on the cell phone in kind of a more frequent manner. If we were moving in a direction that we were one-to-one, we would want to use that as our primary device in the classroom, and the cell phone would have less of a function as an educational tool. There would still be times where that was the appropriate educational tool. So we have a digital photography class that's cell phone photography. Some of our TV production classes use phones for educational purposes. And so I would never want to hamstring us to not be able to utilize that, because it's a really powerful learning device. But I also would be mindful that it would be far less needed on a consistent basis in the classroom if we were moving one-to-one. Does that answer what you were getting at?
Paul?
On the one-to-one Chromebook, is there, if a family's poor and there's no other devices in the household, and the child takes home that Chromebook for the purpose of doing equity and being able to work at home, how can we make that work in a setting where the family doesn't have any other, no Wi-Fi, no this, no that? And I don't know if that's possible, but I'm just throwing out the hypothetical.
So I think it happens in a couple of ways in different districts. I know Verizon's got a program for economically disadvantaged families that actually is relatively affordable. I think the last time I saw it was about $14 a month, where they provide Wi-Fi in the home. And so there are ways in community resources that we could help better support families around that. But that would certainly be something that we would want to look at logistically to make sure that providing that resource that our students are still able to fully access it and utilize the learning that's happening online.
So you talked a little bit about the culinary arts and the technology courses. When you were considering the 10 additional offerings or 11 additional offerings that you're considering for next year, did any of these topics come up in conversation?
So Our current tech ed teacher, Scott Doobie, would love to be able to run more offerings, but he's one person, and that's all that he's fully able to do. And then when you start looking at people's licensing, we're then asking people to teach classes outside of their license. So for some of those, we offer currently robotics classes, but we want to make sure that we can continue to expand and grow that programming along with some of our computer science. We don't currently probably have enough in the engineering area, and we're in the process of growing some of our physics offerings. And so with that, I think, comes some of the outcroppings of what could be higher level classes in mechanics and engineering. And wanting there to be the combination of the technical and the practical. So it's more looking at something that I think is an area of need that we could and potentially should be growing.
Anybody else? No? All right, I have a few. I was saved to stay to the end. A question on the technology and integration specialist position, reporting-wise, because that does sound like more like it's almost an IT-ish position. No,
It's an educator.
it's an educator.
It's an
True
educator.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And
You'll see the IT position in Deb's budget tomorrow.
yeah, I'm sure. I haven't looked through those yet either.
So
It's really got them
that's
last
an
week.
educator. It's someone that's focused on how to implement technology within the classroom setting. There'll always be a component there where they're someone that's called upon to help support because they're going to be here, they're going to be building-based, which is, I know, a big thing, and we've heard through presentations already, and you'll continue to hear through presentations tomorrow. And so there'll be an aspect of it where they're here to help and support. But for me, I think the place where we really need the support the most is on how to best utilize that resource within the classroom setting. And so that person is always going to be an educator first.
Okay. And I guess this goes to that, are you envisioning co-teaching by
Some of
and
that.
large?
So
Okay.
some of it might be in the moment co-teaching or like planned out co-teaching for a lesson or for a unit. Some of it is going to be a lot of it is going to be coaching.
Okay.
And so that person's schedule would look different.
Okay.
And a lot of it will be coaching with faculty and staff on how to best utilize that resource. That they're interested in implementing in the classroom, and two, that at times we've already purchased and maybe aren't utilizing to its full capacity. I think of a lot of some of the iReady work that we're starting to really make inroads with our English department, but there's more capacity even still that we can get out of some of the programming that we already have. But we need someone that can have full ownership of that and be able to really know the ins and outs of all of the curriculum that we have.
Okay. I guess one of my concerns is in prior cuts at the elementary level, there used to be specific technology teachers at each of the elementary schools. The media specialists, I think, are trying to do a great job or doing a great job trying to bridge the divide over running a library and teaching media and to some degree trying to pick up some of that work of the former technology teacher, and the classroom teachers are doing that as well. But I see it, my oldest son kind of bridges that divide. He got some explicit in the beginning, and then now it's very much classroom-based. I see the instruction now at the elementary level being very classroom-focused. It's the things that you traditionally use in a classroom just brought to kind of a digital format. And I'm worried about those kids as they come up and have these more advanced offerings, because they did used to get, some basic coding and things like that at that time, where it's very easy for students to pick it up. I think even easier probably than high school. And now we're going to have those students accessing, these higher levels of learning, but without having those basics. So I think for me, there's some concern about how do we accommodate those students as they're coming up?
How do we bridge the gap?
Yeah.
In terms of my vision for it, and I think some of this, it'd certainly be dependent on the person in the position, and the way we felt like we could best utilize them. But if we're able to have one person that can then help provide professional development and training to a much wider audience, we're going to be better able to meet the needs of all children. You know, if on average, a single teacher can see about 100 students over the course of the year, someone that's able to train all of our faculty on an ongoing and continuing basis is going to then be able to have a greater impact on our whole school and our whole community, and able to build the capacity of our faculty and staff, which I think is really important, especially as we move, hopefully, in this direction. That you really need to build everyone's capacity so that when we are providing resources, they're being fully realized.
Yeah, so it's more of a teach a man to fish.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. On the textbooks, real quick, is there any online aspects to the textbooks that you have proposed in
Not
here?
currently identified.
Okay,
Yep, not currently. The world history is probably something that we'll have to look at as we finish going through the process.
Okay.
I think the last I heard, there are 2 companies that are going to be coming out to give proposals, so that'll probably be part of their proposal that they're coming forward with.
Okay.
And so that'll be something that we'll have to look more closely at as the proposals come in.
Okay, all right. Trying to see if I had anything else in here in my notes real quick. Just transportation, there's a couple of spots in here that it's noted, underperforming arts and things like that. I'm assuming that as well will be possibly adjusted as a result of the busing contract?
Correct.
The transportation contract?
Yes, it's all
Okay.
based on the contract.
That's what I thought, just double checking and making sure, because when I see solid numbers in there, you know, you want to know what to count on and what maybe moving, so. So, and then this is maybe a past question, but repairing the middle and high school bleachers, am I imagining that we had some funding for that in the past? Was that only a partial fix for what's?
We did, there was a repair, there is still a major repair needed for the bleachers to be correctly fixed.
Okay.
There were
so
some repairs, they're not the full,
What did we repair before?
I believe it was the other set of bleachers.
Oh,
I believe they were stuck and
Okay.
it was a, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
This is now making them more user-friendly, so we can put them in and out
Okay.
as needed, rather than once and then set it and forget it.
Right
So
up.
especially on the middle school side, not to speak fully for Al, but especially on the middle school side, when we pull the bleachers out for events, so tonight our wrestling team was up there and we had bleachers out, it becomes difficult to move those back in, and then it impacts our middle school wellness classes, our gym classes on the middle school side, when they have less space to be able to utilize.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I just,
Yep.
I thought we had allocated some money for it, so I was confused as to where
Yes,
that
you
went.
had.
All right, excellent. That was it for me. Anybody else? Last chance? Yeah.
So the bleachers in the middle school gym are not electronic, right? And the ones in the high school gym are electronic? Don't they go,
I don't think any of them are
I
electric.
don't think any of them are
No.
electronic.
no, they don't? They just
No.
get pushed? Oh, I thought,
Yeah.
okay.
In any project we were to do to replace, they would absolutely be electronic, that's standard now. So can I just say that, so in regards to capital, as far as timing, I do have that report back from Habib and Associates, kind of looking at times when they can come and present that to you directly. Decided, and talking with Narissa, decided to get past budget season. This is certainly not something we're tackling in this budget cycle. So rather than get it confused in with the budget discussion, even if to give any false pretense that we're putting any money in the budget, we decided to wait till April. So they're scheduled to be here for your April meeting to present that budget. And at that point, we will have our business manager on board as well and start to facilitate that process.
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for your time, Principal Kelly.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right. So we'll be back here at 6 PM tomorrow night. Last night for this week. Hang on just a second.
I'm just practicing. Get ready. Say that
enough.
to myself.
Fair enough. So just to remind everybody that all these materials are online, so if it's, you know, you're watching the video after the fact, you can go on and look in the public posting section of the website, and you'll be able to find at least for now, up until the budget sub-website, PEB webpage is complete. Those will be available there, so you'll be able to go back and check out any of the materials to go along with the videos if you're watching the videos. And can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Can I
Oh,
ask
wait,
one quick
sorry,
question?
go ahead.
Are you looking for some type of feedback on this letter that was handed out
I
earlier?
think if you have some, Linda would take it, but it was more an FYI, right?
Okay, thank you.
That was, because
Just wanted
it's-
to make sure
yeah.
we weren't waiting on.
I was talking to Brian about this today, and it's tough only having had one business meeting this month because there are other business things that have come up that I feel like we're scheduling them into non-business meetings. And unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to be. So we're going to see the school business official tomorrow on the agenda because otherwise it was a matter of putting it off to the point that he wouldn't be effective in this budget season. If you saw the email follow-up from the DCC last week, one of the questions that the town officials were asking was about the incurring of debt section. That came up after our business meeting, so Brian and I were talking about putting that very quickly on the 25th workshop. I don't love having it there, but we need to have that conversation before the 29th, and we have limited meetings. I don't want to have to bring in our tentative second meeting of the month for 2 or 3 things if we don't have to. So I think it just makes more sense to try and load them into some of our non-traditional meetings when it's, whatever, a 10-minute conversation here or, a 15-minute conversation there. So there are things like this that'll be just kind of ad hoc along the way. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks,
I'll
Paul.
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, thank you all.